It began just after midnight, the moment when Moscow's skyline glowed not from its lights, but from something far more terrifying. A faint buzz echoed above the city, like a swarm of angry insects. At first, people thought it was thunder. But it wasn't the weather, it was war in the air. Dozens, then hundreds of Ukrainian drones appeared on radar screens, heading straight toward the Russian capital. The strike was unlike anything Russia had faced since the beginning of the invasion. Sirens blared across Moscow, waking millions from their sleep. Videos started flooding social media, tiny dots of light moving in formation, weaving through the clouds, and then exploding one by one over government buildings and military zones. The sky over the Kremlin flashed red, orange, and white as air defense systems kicked into action. Russia's powerful S-400 anti-air systems fired streaks of light into the sky, but for every drone shot down, more appeared behind it. It was as if Ukraine had unleashed a storm of metal and fire. This was not a random attack, it was coordinated, strategic, and psychological. Ukraine was sending a message: nowhere is safe. Inside Moscow's command centers, chaos reigned. Officers scrambled to identify the targets. The drones were small, fast, and hard to detect. Some carried explosives, others just cameras, broadcasting live footage of the Russian capital under fire. It was the first time many Muscovites realized that the war their government had started was no longer distant, it was above their own homes. One eyewitness described it: the sound was like thousands of bees. Then suddenly, boom, windows shattered, alarms screamed, and everyone ran to basements. Firefighters rushed to multiple districts as explosions lit up the horizon. The smell of burning fuel and metal filled the air. Ukraine had warned for months that it would take the war to Russian soil if the attacks on its cities continued. This strike proved that threat was real. The swarm drones were not just about destruction, they were about showing capability, about saying, "We can reach you." Experts say Ukraine used a mix of long-range kamikaze drones, likely modified from civilian models, and military-grade systems capable of traveling hundreds of kilometers. Launched from hidden sites and even from inside Russia's own borders, these drones overwhelmed Moscow's layered defenses. Some reports claimed the drones even targeted airbases used to launch attacks on Ukraine. Russian media initially tried to downplay the incident, but as videos went viral, explosions near the Kremlin, plumes of smoke rising over elite neighborhoods, the truth was impossible to hide. The Russian Ministry of Defense released a statement saying most drones were intercepted. But the damage was already done. The psychological impact was massive. In Kyiv, the mood was electric. Social media lit up with clips of Muscovites running for shelter, mixed with memes and celebrations. For many Ukrainians, it was a moment of justice, a taste of the fear they had lived with for years as Russian missiles pounded their own cities. Now they know how it feels, one Ukrainian soldier wrote. But the attack wasn't without consequences. Within hours, Russian officials ordered a full-scale review of air defenses around the capital. Anti-drone systems were deployed on government buildings. Checkpoints were reinforced. Yet, even with all the technology and manpower, one fact remained clear. Ukraine had managed to strike the heart of Russia. Intelligence reports later revealed that the attack had been planned for weeks. Engineers in Ukraine worked around the clock, modifying commercial drones for long-range missions, packing them with explosives and smart guidance systems. Each drone cost only a few $1,000s, but together, they caused millions in damage and global shock. The timing was strategic too. It happened just days after another wave of Russian missile strikes on Ukrainian cities. Kyiv's response was symbolic, a reminder that aggression would not go unanswered. Analysts say it also tested Russia's internal defense network, mapping weaknesses in radar coverage for future operations. As dawn broke over Moscow, the fires finally began to fade. Streets were littered with drone fragments, pieces of metal, wires, and circuit boards scattered across the asphalt. Police cordoned off several areas while investigators collected debris. On social media, Muscovites shared images of drones that had crashed into parks, apartment roofs, and even near the Kremlin walls. For the first time in decades, Russia's mighty capital had been struck not by missiles, but by tiny, buzzing machines controlled from hundreds of kilometers away. It was a new era of warfare, cheap, mobile, and unstoppable. The Kremlin's response was furious. Officials blamed NATO for helping Ukraine carry out terrorism, while Ukrainian spokespeople neither confirmed nor denied responsibility. The silence was strategic, letting the chaos speak for itself. Inside Russia, fear and anger spread rapidly. People questioned how the most protected city in the country could be breached so easily. Meanwhile, world leaders watched closely. Western analysts called it a turning point in modern conflict where drones, not armies, define power. The attack showed that even one of the world's most defended capitals was vulnerable to small-scale, intelligent warfare. It also raised questions about escalation. Would Russia retaliate harder or rethink its strategy? By evening, Russian state TV aired heavily censored footage, claiming all threats were neutralized. But behind the scenes, reports leaked that several energy facilities and communication centers had been hit. Air defense crews were exhausted. Some missiles had even missed, causing damage in civilian areas. The propaganda couldn't hide reality. Moscow had been hit, and the world saw it live. Days later, a wave of smaller drone attacks continued across Russia. Airbases, fuel depots, and rail lines targeted hundreds of miles from the front. The message was unmistakable. Ukraine was not backing down. In Kyiv, experts called it the evolution of the battlefield. Drones had become the great equalizer, small, cheap, and devastatingly effective. One Ukrainian technician described it best: "You can't stop the wind, and you can't stop drones." The strike on Moscow was not the end, it was the beginning of a new phase of the war. Civilians in Moscow began preparing for more attacks. Drone alarms became common. People installed window film to protect against glass shattering. Panic buying started in some districts. Rumors spread that government officials had secretly moved families out of the city. Internationally, the world was split. Some nations feared escalation into a broader conflict. Others quietly admired Ukraine's ability to strike deep into enemy territory despite limited resources. Military strategists compared the event to Pearl Harbor, not in scale, but in symbolism. It shattered the illusion of invulnerability. As weeks passed, Moscow's skies remained tense. Every distant sound made people look up. The psychological toll was visible, a city constantly watching the heavens, fearing the next swarm. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drones kept evolving, faster, smarter, and more autonomous. In one chilling moment caught on camera, a drone flew directly toward a government building before being shot down only meters away. The explosion blew out windows across the block, and that image, a single drone flying fearlessly through tracer fire, became iconic across Ukraine. In the end, the attack changed everything. It wasn't just about destruction. It was about message, morale, and momentum. Ukraine had shown that innovation could outmatch size and determination could reach anywhere. Hundreds of Ukrainian drones had struck Moscow, and when the smoke cleared, the war had entered a new age. No wall, no defense, and no border could stop the will of a nation fighting for its survival. And in that silence after the explosions, both sides knew this was only the beginning.